You are listening to the It's Your Time podcast, and I'm your host, certified life coach Michelle Arnold Berg. In today's episode, I'm sharing a recent conversation with Lana Manikowski, speaker and author of the book, So Now What? Welcome to the It's Your Time podcast, the podcast where busy professionals like you get the practical solutions and support you need to gain control of your schedule so you can strive to be the best in your career, but without the stress and overwhelm. If you're looking to increase your energy and decrease your stress, you are in the right place. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast, friends. Okay, I have a treat for you today. You know how much I love sharing interviews with you, conversations about topics that will hopefully help you in your life, and also that can open up visibility and awareness to some amazing, powerful women doing some amazing, powerful work. And today is just that. Because today I am sharing a recent conversation with Lana Manikowski, and we are talking about a topic near and dear to my heart. Now, before we jump in, let me just give you a little bit of background on Lana. She is an author, a certified life coach, a keynote speaker, an infertility advocate, and she is dedicated to helping women thrive after infertility. She is the founder of the Other Days Brunch, which you have got to totally listen to this in the conversation. She discusses it, and I think it is such a cool event for so many women. She is the host of the So Now What podcast, creating spaces where childless women feel seen, understood, and probably one of my most favorite words, empowered. Now, after a 7-year journey through fertility treatments, including several rounds of IUI and IVF, ended without a child, and donor egg and adoption weren't her path, Lana experienced the isolation, self-judgment, and grief of navigating the future she never planned for. And when she couldn't find the support that she needed, you know what she did? She built it herself. And now, through her coaching, advocacy efforts, and community, she helps women rediscover their relevance, connection, and purpose beyond motherhood. I love that so much for so many women. There is purpose beyond motherhood. With an advanced coaching certification in grief and post-traumatic growth, Lana helps women process the loss of a dream of motherhood and move forward with intention. And friends, we all need a little bit more of that in life, moving forward with intention, no matter where you are in your journey. Her coaching program, Thrive After Infertility, guides women in rebuilding their relationships, reconnecting with their bodies, and creating meaningful milestones that bring fulfillment in decades ahead. You guys, we are so lucky to have her here today because her book, So Now What, is just being released. We need to go out and grab it because this book offers a transformative roadmap for embracing life beyond infertility, helping women reclaim joy, meaning, and a sense of direction without the children they once longed for. Lana is a sought-after speaker and media contributor and is known for her powerful message, "Your story isn't over, it's just beginning." And hopefully we can all lean into that. Lana lives in downtown Chicago with her husband and her fur baby, Coco. You know how much I love a fur baby. And we had such an amazing discussion. So without further ado, please take a listen. Okay, I am so excited to talk to you today about this topic. Can you maybe just start by introducing yourself in a way that you most enjoy?
Sure. Well, my name is Lana Manikowski, and I am an infertility advocate. So I love to talk about the things that people often get nervous to talk about when it comes to infertility. And I live in Chicago with my husband and my fur child, Coco.
Oh, yes. So we love the fur babies. And I do want to take a minute to stop and recognize that I do think this can be maybe not an easy topic for everyone, depending on where they are in the journey. So maybe you can even just kind of tell the listeners a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Well, I got married late. I was 35 when I decided to get married, and I got a diagnosis at age 37 of something called unexplained infertility, which, yes, is a clinical diagnosis, surprising, but basically meaning that there was no pointed condition like PCOS, endometriosis, no autoimmune issues that would have pointed to why I wasn't able to get pregnant on my own. So I was at 37 when I started my journey through fertility treatments, which spanned about a 7-year span of my life, off and on, not back to back. But I really just had that desire to become a mom, or I thought I had a desire to become a mom, because a lot of the societal expectations just mean that falls in line with the things that you're supposed to do as a female. And when that journey ended, I was 44 and not given any resources with how to rediscover what my meaning and my purpose would be if motherhood wasn't going to be part of my story. So that's really where I became disappointed by the lack of resources that are available to people trying to figure out that next step without kids. And back in 2021, I finished my life coach certification and decided that I would start a new chapter for women who, like me, weren't given resources. And that's when I got my life coach certification and started my own podcast talking about life after IVF doesn't work. And yeah, so that's kind of what's brought me to today.
I think, and I know that we've talked about this even prior to recording, but I do think this is such an important topic, and to be able to help folks like this, like you and I also, right? Like not just folks out there. I do feel like I had the same thought. I was going to be a PTA mom, I thought. Now, looking back, right, we think we have this idea of what things are supposed to be looking like. And you kind of hit on it, the whole idea of societal pressures and thinking this is the way it quote unquote should be. I think once I realized that I wasn't going to be a mom, that I felt like such a failure. So can you maybe talk a little bit about what you do with your clients, what you've done with yourself when you're faced with that, and maybe kind of speak to some of the tools that you help them to navigate in these situations?
Thank you. I'd love to. Well, I think from what I know of you, I think we're pretty similar, very goal-oriented people, used to finding success or creating success in our lives. And when it comes to infertility, and especially going through fertility treatments, the hardest thing for me as a very goal-driven and success-driven person is that I couldn't crack the code, right? I was doing all the things I was supposed to do. I was the best student, the one showing up early, doing all the extra credit type stuff of the massage, Reiki, everything I could think of that would help increase my chances. And it really played with my brain as far as, am I not a successful person if I can't figure out how to have a child? Something that I looked at so many women just naturally being able to do, people talking about, oh, I, got pregnant on my honeymoon. I didn't, even want to get pregnant. And here I was pregnant. So it was a hard thing for me to not see myself as a failure as a woman if I couldn't figure out how to do this thing that biologically we are ingrained to believe that that's what our body is supposed to do. So for the women that commonly come to find me and work with me, they are sort of that same success-driven, goal-driven, used to figuring it out in their life type of people, and they feel very set back in their lives. So what I find are commonly three main areas that women are struggling with when they either are childless not by choice, meaning maybe they never found a partner that they were choosing to create a child with. Maybe single motherhood wasn't right for them. For me and a lot of the women that I work with, it's the infertility treatments and not being able to figure that out. But the three main areas a lot of women are struggling with are relationships. Like, how do you keep relationships with your friends with kids? Because when you get together, you feel like the outsider. The conversation's always about kid-centric things, and you sort of feel like you don't really have your place in your friend group anymore. Maybe in your marriage, or in a relationship that you're in. For me, I question, like, what's my marriage what's going to keep us together? Because I thought having the kids would be the common bond that would keep us growing together as a family. And so there were times when I questioned, was my marriage going to be enough? So relationships also with your family, and you have expectations, say from a mom or an aunt who's always like, when are we going to have babies? Like, they're putting the pressure on you. So there's three main aspects of where I focus on. So relationships being kind of bundled in there. The next thing is forgiving your body. So this relationship that you have with your body that it didn't do. And if you're watching or listening, I'm putting air quotes around this, your body didn't do what it was supposed to do. And how do you make amends with your body and say, I'm here for you anyway. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm not going to quit working out. I'm not going to start eating terribly because I feel like I have this body that I don't care for anymore. And then the third thing is, what are you going to do with the rest of your life and owning your time? Because oftentimes when you're the childless one and you show up to workplace environments, it's always like everyone's got things that they did over the weekend that was carting kids around and spelling bees and college visits and all these things. And then people ask what you did. And it feels like your life just doesn't seem as meaningful and the things that you're doing seem as impactful as those with kids. So really, how do you figure out how to lean into the things that you're doing and have a lot of pride for how you're choosing to spend your time? So you're not dreading the next 50 years of your life thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm going to die old alone in a nursing home because going to yoga on Saturday is getting really old is the only thing that gives me pride and enjoyment. So those are the three main pillars of my coaching program, which is called Thrive After Infertility. And I find that, there's those are like the common things. There's so many little subtopics within those three main pillars. And it's really been helpful in creating this life that you feel connected to and one that you feel as though you're proud and meaningful and purposeful as a woman without children.
Yeah, I think you have touched on so many different things that I would just love to unpack a little bit. You kind of made me chuckle a little bit because I did the Reiki also. And I had one doctor who had me eating like nuts and berries. And my roommate at the time, she was like, does that doctor know you're trying to get pregnant? Like what, nuts and berries? What's going on? And the Reiki helped for my headaches. It was amazing, but it didn't help for what I was there for. So I think too, yeah, paying attention to like your body, right, is so important. When you also talk about goals and being driven, like at the time, my husband was a football coach. So I thought I was going to, not only did I know when we were going to get pregnant, I was planning it out. So it was not in football season, right? So coming from that mindset, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to be football season. Let's just see if we could make it happen, right? And then it's that like fail, fail, fail. And I actually was coached on feeling like I have to apologize for my life. To your point, what did you do over the weekend? Do you have kids? No, but I'm always like, no, but I have a dog. Like, I'm still important, right? Like, it's that, again, back to the society pressure. I think one of the things you talked about when you talk about what did you do over the weekend or the work setting and relationships, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on when, let's say, a case goes late or whatever it is that you are, what your occupation is. Here, I'm talking more about sales and medical device, that the person without the kids is the one expected to do the late nights because of the sports or the school or any of those activities. Kind of what's your take on that situation?
Yeah, well, I can speak really directly to this because I spent 20 years as a med device rep in the OR. And I felt like I didn't know, people might not have asked me directly to always do the things that I did, but I felt like as the good colleague who didn't have children, I would be the one who would volunteer for the lab on a Saturday if we were doing a cadaver lab, or if there was a conference and someone needed to be away for the weekend, I'd always be the one to raise my hand because I was like, well, I don't have the excuse of having kids to not go to this. So I wanted to seem like I was the really good colleague who was supportive of those with kids. And what it really did was burn me out and make me feel like I always had to show up doing more to compensate for not having children. And when people would go on maternity leave and they needed extra case coverage, I would be like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Or I'd, go out of my territory and help other people because I felt like it was expected of me since I didn't have kids. And then I realized like it was making me view my life as less than and not really prioritizing the things that were important to me. And so it was this continuous cycle of trying to do more to feel validated, yet not validating the things that are important to me. So it created a huge amount of burnout for me in my device job because when it wasn't that, it was wanting to be in President's Club and then wanting to be the one, the favorite rep that the docs always loved and the nurses loved. So it was this constant need for validation that I had to compensate for not having children.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, right? When we think that the purpose is to be a mom and then it's not, like, how do you kind of help your clients figure out what that is? Because to your point, I think the job is the job. And it's been a lot of coaching, right? I didn't just think this initially, but I look back now and I think the job is the job. I don't have kids, but I do have a life. And so, how do you help your clients kind of figure out what that life is for them?
Yeah, and it's a very challenging place to be. I just want to acknowledge that it's not something that happens always in 12 weeks. My coaching program is commonly 12 weeks, but it's getting the starting tools of understanding when you're in an environment that makes you, or when you feel at peace, when you feel connected to yourself, when you feel joyful, like paying attention to where those environments are. What are the activities that you're doing? What are some of the thoughts that you're thinking about yourself when you're in those environments? And then understanding, where else can I get that? Is it just in a yoga class on a Saturday? Maybe, but maybe are there other places where you feel that connection to yourself? And I also think I have a different take on purpose than most people do. So I'll try to unpack
I'd
that a
love to
little bit
hear. Yeah,
here,
for sure.
because for me, I was kind of like that. Like, what's going to be my purpose? What's going to be my legacy? Because I just always thought that's what kids were for. And when I didn't have that, I knew that there had to be more for me. But I realized that a lot of us go after a purpose to chase. It's kind of like, okay, I need to make sure it's something really good and something that other people will benefit from, thinking about me. And it becomes very overwhelming because you're like, oh, but if that doesn't sound big enough to somebody, should I call that my purpose? What should I be? So what I've realized is the more I've leaned into being at peace with who I am and showing up in this life where I feel energized and I feel connected to myself and the people around me, and I have love for the things that I do and the ways that I show up in my life, I create purpose just showing up as me. And different people take different things from us as our purpose. And I think about my second grade teacher. She maybe was a mom. She maybe had all these other things that she felt validated as her purpose. But her purpose to me was to teach me mathematics and, the 2 + 2 and the times tables and all that. So when I got to thinking about purpose, I realized that you don't have to declare it for yourself. Showing up as you, oftentimes people find different reasons that you play a role in their life that is significant. And then that sort of takes the pressure off in realizing, like, hey, maybe I don't have to declare this I am blah, 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 blah purpose statement for the rest of your life. And I think as we evolve as humans, our purposes change too, and the ways that we show up. So that's my focus on purpose. And I try to impart that on the people that I work with in my coaching program to take the pressure off themselves, that you don't have to just choose one thing and
Yeah.
rubber stamp it for the rest of your life.
That's so good, and I think one of the things you talked about, and I think this goes back to being goal driven and always looking to achieve, right? We're always outside looking externally, worried about what will other people think of us when really it's what do we think of ourselves? And can we get quiet enough to pay attention to those times that you're talking about? If we're always going, 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 what you're suggesting is like, put the brakes on for a minute, pay attention to what lights you up and do more of
Yes.
that.
Yes. And it may oftentimes feel insignificant in comparison to parenthood or motherhood. And that's part of the process too. Like, of course, we've had this star, in the sky that has been the thing that we've been searching for. So anything that doesn't equal to that in the beginning is going to feel less than. It's not like this thing comes and taps you on the shoulder and is like, boom, I'm here. And your desire for motherhood goes away. I think it's a process that continues to diminish. And there's still moments, this far advanced as I see myself in the thought work and processing my inability to become a mom, where I'll look at a mom and a child interact, and there'll be emotion that I feel of just wondering what that must feel like, or seeing a pregnant person passing by me in a cute little maternity outfit and wondering, like, what would that have been like if that was me? So I think there's an acknowledgement that these feelings and these thoughts of what life could have been like don't have to leave you for you to feel as though you're becoming connected to yourself. It's just this gradual process of how you can notice things maybe that seem very small and start to build on them instead of just like knocking them over and just be like, oh no, that's not motherhood. We're not going to focus on that.
Yeah, that's so good. It's almost I kind of see it almost as like a grieving, a loss of like the identity that I thought it was going to be, and then moving on to like, okay, so now what? Which brings us right to your book. How
Yes.
exciting!
Yes, I'm super excited. It's been something that I wanted to do for quite a while, was write a book. And it seemed like a really big chore to do. But then I realized that the reason I became a certified life coach, the reason I left my med device job in July was so that I could really create something where there's such a void. And I decided to start my process of writing a book almost 2 years ago and really put full steam ahead. These last maybe 14 months have been really working on how I can put this into a format that is like a resource and provides a opportunity for somebody who has a void when they leave fertility treatments without a child, or even if never tried fertility treatments. There's chapters in there that you don't have to just have gone through IVF or gone through fertility treatments to feel like it's a resource to you, but it's really an opportunity for me to kind of give like a roadmap of
Mhm.
how do you handle the holidays like Mother's Day, like Halloween, maybe back to school when there's all these kid-centric things going on. How do you handle the conversations with your friends with kids? Like, we talked about that at the onset of this podcast here, but how to create relevance for yourself and a path for yourself where you can create a life that you love, even if it doesn't include the children that you dreamed of.
Mm.
So yeah, the book has taken take an opportunity to really verbalize and, well, I guess not verbalize, I would say figure out how to put into words on paper a way that you can start to create this path for yourself. And also the other part of that is getting physicians and fertility clinics and healthcare to understand that you need to offer something to patients besides adoption or egg donor services. Oftentimes, moving forward without children isn't part of the conversation. So when you get to that point in your journey and there's no one addressing it as an okay way to end up, and then on top of that, not giving you any resources, it can make you really feel like you failed. And I'm hoping to get to a point where this becomes part of a resource packet that my podcast or my book or, conversations about life without children become an okay way to end up if you're childless after infertility.
I love that you touched on the parts of maybe not going through IVF and not having kids, because I do feel like, and again, I've done a lot of work, but I think at the time I blamed my job because we know we have crazy schedules. And so I didn't do any of that. And so I think there's that extra layer of like, oh, you didn't try. Oh, you don't want to adopt. Like, right. It's just that extra added, like, well, you should do this or you could do this. So I love that you offer information and resources for folks that said, like, you know what, if it wasn't meant to be, I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole chapter I put in there about things people say because it's so common when you say you don't have kids, people lean in, the hand goes on the chest and like, I'm so sorry, but you can always adopt. And yeah, I know I can, but that's not the right answer. It's a beautiful option for some people. And not doing it doesn't mean that I didn't want to be a mom bad enough. And I think that we carry this vision that people think that we're not good enough people, that adoption wasn't the right answer, or that I didn't, choose to do egg donor and all these other things that were an option to me that I had to say no to because I knew that I was at the end of my rope and doing more was just going to prolong this process of feeling like I was in limbo and the inassurances that come, it wasn't a guaranteed thing that if you decide to go for adoption, that you were going to have a child. So there was just so many things that I think we accept as an okay thing for people to say to us when we don't have children. I actually created a whole document. It's something available I put on my website because I find so many people don't know how to handle conversations. Like if you're, say, at a conference and you meet somebody and they start with so how many kids do you have? there's right away that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm already not connected to this person. So it's called the top 27 things people say when you're childless and
Mm.
how to respond, because oftentimes we don't even know how to take a conversation like that without minimizing who we are and how we show up in those type of environments without kids.
Yeah, you've hit on so many things. I feel like throughout this conversation, I keep getting chills. I'm like, oh, yep,
Mm.
that lands. Yep, that lands. So, I mean, it feels spot on. And it's interesting too. I have some patients, that I worked with them for years. And back in the day, there was a rep with a competitive, actually, your company, who was
Old
short.
company.
Yeah, old company. Yes, sorry, old company. Your was short and had blonde hair, and they would always confuse. Like we would have some shared patients, and they'd be like, "Oh, how are your kids?" I'm like, "No, that's the other rep." Like I have a dog, but again, it's that whole like, "But I have a dog," trying
Yeah.
to like make up for it. So interesting. Now, you mentioned Mother's Day, and I will say it is not always, I used to hate it, and now I feel like it's not my favorite. So I feel like there's growth, but I think you have an amazing opportunity for people with your event. Can you speak to that? There's so many great things you have going on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, it's called The Others Day, and it started in 2022, just on a limb. I remember it was April. I was walking through Target and there were all the banners about Mother's Day, and then the inbox was starting to flood in. And I have a mother who I'm very close with who's active in my life. So it wasn't that I can't celebrate and be happy about Mother's Day. I love the opportunity to celebrate that with her, but I just felt like there's this tinge of pain that would like come through me when I was like, oh, I'll never know what it's like to have the kids bring me breakfast in bed or write a handmade Mother's Day card or all these things that we envisioned our lives would be like when we thought about aging with children. And so I decided to create a meetup group. I went on Meetup and started a group called Childless and Child Free Women. And I live in Chicago, so it's for women in the Chicagoland area. And I put a post out and I said, this is a new group. I'm hosting a brunch the Saturday before Mother's Day. It's, I gave the location, the specifics, and people were like all over it. They loved it. So that was in 2022. We're now getting ready on May 10th. It will be our fourth Others Day brunch. It continues to grow. And it's not only for women without children, but also if women have lost their mom, or I have, some friends who have moms with severe dementia that don't remember them. And there's disconnection around Mother's Day. So it's an opportunity to come together and feel connected to other women. It is not a doom and gloom event. I always try to make people know it's not like come and tell your sad story, although if you feel like you need to, I would listen to it, but it's more showing up and feeling like you have an opportunity to celebrate and recognize yourself. So it's always the Saturday before Mother's Day. People have come into Chicago from all over the US, Puerto Rico, Texas, Florida, Kansas, Missouri. I mean, it blows my mind how many
Wow.
people come in that feel called to feel connected on this day. So I do it as a brunch on Saturdays. So people come in from out of town, they can get on a flight, go back home, or do whatever they need to do on Mother's Day the next day. I've also been on the national primetime news the last 2 years talking about the Others Day because I think it's a time that doesn't land well or feel connective to a lot of people. And I feel really proud of how it's grown and the purpose that it serves. So if anyone's
I love
listening,
that
you still have time to come in. You can go to my website. I know you're going to probably put some links
for sure.
on your website, but I'm really excited to be in a place where I can create connection from where I felt so disconnected for so long.
Yeah, and
And
I think you need that
there's,
these days.
yeah, there's just, there's not a lot of people that talk about the stuff that I talk about. And I notice when I do talk about it, how many people lean forward and feel like there's an ability to recognize their story because for so long it's been silenced. And, I know I lived that and I hid behind a lot of things in my life because I didn't feel like I was deserving and good enough because my body didn't produce a child. And we don't need to live like that.
Right? I mean, look at all that you have going on, the book, the coaching, the event. There's so many amazing things. Have we missed anything?
Well, I'd love to go back to the grief part. You
Oh,
you
yeah, for
touched
sure.
on it because one of the things that I did is I got an advanced certification. You might know Krista St. Germain,
Absolutely.
who she coaches it's moms who have lost their partners or spouses. But she did an advanced certification last year on grief and post-traumatic growth. And even though she coaches in a totally different niche, obviously to moms, I realized that there was a huge grief that women are going through, grieving a life that didn't turn out the way that they thought it would. And we've maybe didn't lose a parent, didn't lose a sibling, a husband, whatever the case is. Yet this feeling of grief is so significant because you're grieving this life that you thought you were going to have. So I love that I've been able to add that to my resume, if you will, my coaching resume, that I got this advanced certification in grief and post-traumatic growth, because disenfranchised grief is what you would consider what people went through who had this dream of something that never became a reality. And a lot of times we don't like to associate ourselves as grieving individuals because you're like, well, you're just grieving a dream. Like, it was just only this vision in your mind. But for those of us that envisioned motherhood as part of our lives, it felt so real. And it was like you lost this whole future that was, just going to be set forth with these milestones. You're like, okay, well, by the time, my kid's back in school, then I'm going to go back to, being a rep full time. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to, send them off to college. And then we're going to downsize in our home and all these things that were so just planned out for us. And when you don't have that, you're really grieving this life that you never had. So I just wanted to touch, if someone feels like that's relatable, I just want to acknowledge that you are able to grieve something that was only ever a dream.
Yeah, and that's interesting. As you speak more to that, I even think about what you're talking about with different friends, like relationships. And it's so interesting. Mel Robbins talked about this in her book, Let Them, right? The big one that's out now. She talks about being an adult and trying to make friends, like just in general. So I feel like what you're speaking to, when you don't even have the connection of the mom, there might even be some bit of grieving in there because of the loss in the friendship kind of setups that you've had throughout the years.
Totally. Yeah. And just people telling you or expecting that you'd be over it by now, or hang on, like it might happen, oh, you never know. My aunt's cousin's sister, Mabel, got pregnant at 62. And you're like, okay, well,
My sister was like, Hoda Kotb had a kid and she was over 50. I'm like, I think I'm good. Right now, I'm good.
yeah. So, it's just, it's the fact that there's this whole opportunity to create this life that you love, even if it turns out so differently than you thought. But we just don't hear people talk about it. So I really appreciate you inviting me to share this message with your listeners, because, even if someone's listening and it's not their story, they know someone who maybe has gone through infertility or never was able to have the child that they wanted. I hope that this allows them to be a more acknowledging friend to them, but maybe send this podcast episode on to them to glean something from it that they didn't have before.
Yeah, and I think about what you talked about, how, oftentimes we look at, like, what will our legacy be, right, if we're not a mom? But, like, think of the legacy, and I try to, like, pay attention to this, all of the women who don't have kids, like, the things that you're doing in the world, like, what an impact you're making, far greater maybe than even if we were moms, right? The differences that you're making in the lives of others is tremendous. So
Yes,
thank
and we
you
all
for
have our different path. And when you keep fighting with the path that you've been given, I mean, it's a never-ending battle. And if you can just lean into it and say, this might not have been where I wanted to be, and I'm going to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z, it makes it so much easier.
Yes, absolutely. Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
Well, I'm most commonly on Instagram, I guess, if I were to have to choose the social media platform. That's Lana.Manikowski. I have a website, LanaManikowski.com. And then I mentioned, I have a podcast that's focused on life after IVF doesn't result in children. So that's called the So Now What podcast. It's just like my book, So Now What.
And the book is out now. As we're
Yes.
airing this on April 3rd, it's official. People can get it.
Yes, Amazon will have it. There's an ebook and a paperback book. So yeah, I'd appreciate anyone who wants to share it. please, this is my first book. If you liked it, rate and review it too. I guess, yes, I'm a brand new author. So apparently Amazon looks at that just like Apple does with podcasts. So rate and review the book if you happen to get your hands on it.
Rate it high, high,
Yes.
high, high.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure this has been so helpful. I know I love talking to you every time we connect. So I so appreciate your time here today.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, wasn't that great? Please be sure to check Lana out on the socials. Grab a copy of that book, share it. Please, please be sure to share this episode with anyone you think can benefit. It truly is a topic that more women should be able to feel supported in. Links will be in the show notes. But again, the book is So Now What? Create the Life You Love Without the Children You Always Dreamed of. Go grab a copy. And it would be so much fun if you could maybe even tag and post on the socials that you listen to this so that more women have visibility to seeing this information. Okay, friends, that's what we have for you today. Let's meet back here next week. But for now, make it a great day. Take care. Did you know you can take this work to a deeper level with me one-on-one? Go to michelleburkecoaching.com and click on Get Started to begin.